Well, it's 1:01. Are we ready, Rhonda? Let's, before we start the meeting, let's stand and do the pledge and the prayer, and then we'll kick it off. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God, thanks for this opportunity to get here and get together and meet. We're so thankful for everything you've done for us, and we know that we owe everything to you. Please give us wisdom and help us make smart decisions to help our community. In your name, amen.
Amen. Welcome, everybody, to the first meeting of 2024. I think, according to our agenda, the first thing is the oath of office. Are they,
Yes, if you would all please stand and raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Robert Fisher,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly promise
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
That I will support the Constitution of the United States,
and the state of Indiana
the state of Indiana,
and the laws of the United States
the laws of the United States,
and the state of Indiana,
and the state of Indiana,
and I will faithfully execute the duties
and I will
and I will
faithfully
faithfully execute the duties
of my appointment to the best of my skill and ability.
to the best.
to the best of my skill and abilities.
All right, thank you.
Do we have signature stuff we have to do for that as well after the meeting? Okay, so everybody make sure they sign before they leave, please. Since this is the first meeting of the year, this is an organizational meeting, so election of officers for both president and vice president. And I'll be happy to accept motions for either or both positions as anybody deems fit to make.
I would like to renominate Rob as president of the board.
I'd be delighted to second that.
There's a motion and second as to president. Is there any further nominations? We'll show that the nominations are closed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Thank you all for your support. Now for vice president, is there a motion for that?
I'd like to nominate Aggie Sweeney as vice president.
Is there a second for that? Is there any further nominations? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Thank you, Aggie. Troy, I'd like to thank you. Troy had let us know that his workload was simply too much for him to continue as vice president, so thank you for your service as vice president and continued service on the board.
It's my pleasure.
And Aggie, welcome. We have a number of sets of minutes to look at. November 2nd, November 16th, and November 30th. And I'll be happy to consider a motion or discussion as to any of them together or separately as anybody deems appropriate.
I say we approve all three.
Any discussion? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
That being said, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The minutes are approved. There again, I will take mine and sign it. We'll pass this set around. I believe, just for clarification, that during the period of time this occurred, Troy, you were vice president, so you remain vice president on these minutes.
Okay.
There was some discussion as to clarification of the terms of the members. I think Rhonda had sent over the enacting statute, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the intention was they would be done in such a way that it was to be staggered. So is everybody a 4-year term at this point, Rhonda?
Initial appointment, then they go to a 4-year term.
Okay. Okay. So for those who are reappointed this year, so Mike and I are on year 3 then of our appointments.
So we're up next.
Yeah,
Everyone else has been reappointed.
yeah,
To 4-year term.
to 4-year terms.
Okay.
Yep. And Troy, you were reappointed last year. So you're in year 2.
Okay.
It's only 1 year for yours regardless. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any further questions?
So
concerning-
Troy's still on then?
What's that?
Troy's still on the board then?
Troy was reappointed.
Okay, excellent. Just checking.
I hope so.
Just need to make sure, right? Progress updates. Does somebody want to lead on the Trails Master Plan?
Sure. Yeah, so Aggie and I, in previous discussions, are representing the board for working with the vendor to develop a steering committee for the master plan, master Greenway and Blueway plan. The intent was to reach out to 6 to 10 individuals to be part of that steering committee. I'm not doing a quick count, but we've been able to reach all but one so far, and they have accepted. And so we're still waiting to hear from the final person. But the list of the steering committee so far, including myself and Aggie, are Matt Sandy, Fred Helfrich, Rob Parker, Steve Moriarty, Tim Metzger, Ryan Martin, Amanda Plank, and Larry Plummer. And that. Did you mention Craig? Well, he's the individual that the invite has gone to, and he's expressed interest, but we haven't talked to him to confirm it yet. And then with Amy?
Yeah, and with Amy Rowe, we know Amy connects to us, but we're not sure if this is the right role for her.
Okay.
And she told me she was going to try and call me today. She's been tied up in meetings for a few days.
Okay. So everyone I listed has accepted, except for we need to clarify or confirm with both Amy and Craig.
Great, great.
Thank you, Amanda. I noticed that Amanda's in the room.
And the information from TSW in developing the plan is that they should put out an invite for an initial meeting, probably in the next week or so, for the steering committee.
Any comments, questions on the Trails Master Plan?
The only other thing I'll mention is in our packets today, we all have a copy of the agreement with TSW Design Group for this service. And this is, with maybe one minor change, was taken straight out of the proposal that they gave us when they met with us and interviewed back in October or November, when that was. It's been fully executed. It's on file and everything.
I think the only additional discussion I'd add to it is, I know there's starting to be awareness from our adjoining counties in what we're trying to do. Even yesterday, I was at the State House for a Bicycle Indiana program and met with a representative from Elkhart County. They're highly interested in connecting to us, to Goshen through our trail system. So I just want to reiterate, even though our steering committee is representing our county, there's still a great interest in the connections to the surrounding counties. And I know there's also been discussions with individuals from Marshall County as well. So,
Hopefully, they've gotten word that we'd like to connect to whatever trail they
yes,
build.
yeah, and actually, yes, they do. And there's been a lot of development certainly in both those counties and continuing work. And I think they've both been encouraged to learn that we are actively pursuing our trail system plus connections to the region through the trails.
And then I wanted to confirm something. Rob, when you and I talked with Katie a few weeks back, you had indicated you'd like to have all of the members of Park Board, schedules allowing, attend the initial meeting of the steering committee?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll make sure when that meeting survey goes out, for dates and times, that all of you are included on that. I just wanted to confirm that's
Yeah, I
what we
think for the
wanted.
kickoff, in particular, it'd be great for all of us to be there. I know for the benefit of everybody in the audience, TSW asked for a steering committee that they could go to 4 or 5 times for some quick hitter stuff without calling the full board to a quorum. And we agreed to that, but I think for the kickoff meeting, just to see what they're all about, what they're proposing, it's good for all of us to be there.
Well, I think it's also important because part of the process is going to include public input, some separate meetings like we've done previously. And I think while the steering committee may take on some of the brunt of the work, I think it'll take all of us when it comes to those pieces to be involved with this.
And then I wanted to get input on location for the steering committee. We want to be able to offer meetings that folks can participate in virtually as well as in person. And I understand they are not public meetings. And any ideas of where we might want to hold those?
I would, they aren't public meetings of the board of the Kosciuszko County Parks Board, but they are
Yes.
meetings we want the public to attend.
Yes.
Let me put that a little differently.
Yes.
It is not a business meeting of the Parks Board. I think that's an interesting question. I don't know where, besides the several rooms we have here in the county, that would be accessible. If we're using a county building, then I'm going to have to work with Marcia because security is a big issue in our buildings, and we don't generally allow people in after hours without pre-approval, if you will, which is something we can work for. I don't know if the library has those facilities. Amanda, do you know any place up in your area?
Yeah, I actually have a board meeting room. It can seat probably about 10. But we also have rooms at the Syracuse Community Center that is open when we need it. I have access to that, so if that's an option and that's not too far out of the way for folks, I'm happy to arrange.
So do they have remote capabilities? Do they have a camera and TV and that kind of stuff to
I
do?
do, I would have to double check, but I can absolutely figure out a way to set it up.
Okay,
Okay.
At a minimum, if there's a strong internet connection, we can probably make something happen.
right.
But it's just harder to have the virtual people feel as engaged when it's just like coming off of one laptop. So just something that has to be managed.
Yeah, and we know Rob Parker has agreed to serve on the steering committee. So for steering committee meetings, yeah, there's a really good conference room at the chamber too.
Okay.
Yeah. So there will be many different kinds of meetings during the Trails Master Plan. So I was kind of thinking specifically of the steering committee, but there will be bigger, wide open to the general public meetings too that will come up. So just, if we want to schedule a county facility, Rhonda, can we work through you on that? Okay, okay, thank you very much.
Andy, and just for your information, I know when we were going through the Forward Kosciuszko, we worked with also the K-21 Foundation and also the Community Foundation and used their conference rooms at different times too. So I mean, I think there's multiple different avenues you could talk to. Obviously, you'd have to talk to them directly, but
Yeah.
both those agencies are very supportive of what the park board is trying to create and do here. So I'm sure they would like to accommodate if we don't have a facility here that works well for the here at the county. So.
Okay, great, thank you.
Chenworth Extension, I use this, this is you?
Are
Or you
you
want me to take it?
Do you want to start and I'll jump
So
in?
I'll start. We believe that we have the base contract ready to submit to the commissioners. We were not able to get that ready and over to Rhonda in time for it to be advertised. So that is going to go to the commissioners on, I believe, the 30th for their review and approval. As with the other contracts, our setup is that we recommend a contract to the commissioners and they then decide whether they wish to approve that contract or not. We are continuing to work with Triad as to the extension contract. There's still a great desire to get at least the design and engineering done all the way out to the county line. So we have a couple of members from Triad here. Thank you for coming today. So that still remains something that we're working on. Just hasn't been done as quick as I think we wanted to get it done, but let's make sure it's done and done right. Anything to add?
So I'll add a little bit and kind of throw out one or two questions. I don't know that we'll make decisions today, but it might be good just to have a little bit of dialogue. As we have been working with Triad Associates on their work, the design and engineering for the trail, the base plus the two alternates, they provided preliminary cost estimates for the construction of the trail. And as we requested, they provided those cost estimates, you know, just for the base and then for each alternate. And the total adds up to just under 3 million. Now, of course, most of that, like 90%, is the preliminary construction cost. It's preliminary, it will change. We've had a few different people look at it. Rob and I met with Steve Moriarty at County Highways, and he thought some of those numbers are maybe a bit high, some are a bit low. You know, there might be some other ways to deal with some of the water crossings, especially in alternates 1 and 2. I understand others have looked at it and had some questions, and that always happens. We expect that, and that's why we're trying to gather input. We have a few timeline issues to deal with the allocation of the ARPA dollars that we've received from the county. And I think one of the questions I have, given there's a lot of unknowns, because we aren't going to know what construction's really going to cost until it goes out to bid and decisions are made and it happens. But how do we want to allocate or invest the ARPA dollars that we already have in hand, that we know, I believe, all of it needs to be spent or committed by the end of this calendar year. And then the final spending of that by the end of 2026. So we now know, working with Triad and Associates, what we think the costs are for the design and engineering. There might be we want Triad and Associates and their experts to probably talk at least with our County Highways Department and make sure we're looking at the water crossings in the way that we think is what will be needed. And that's why we haven't yet moved forward with the alternates 1 and alternate 2 to have that yet approved by the county commissioners. But I don't think the number with Triad Associates for their costs would change much. Construction costs could change.
Right.
You know, and again, they're preliminary. But it's like, how are we thinking that the ARPA dollars, what are the ARPA dollars going to be paying for? And then over time, we have other options for trying to have other entities invest in the trail construction, or do we want other entities to help even now invest in some of the design and engineering? So, any questions or comments or input?
I mean, my initial thoughts on, because of the ARPA restrictions are to at least get the base done, right?
Base
So,
construction?
well, the base design and engineering, and I would say base construction as well.
Yeah.
Because I'm optimistic that we could have a quote and an expectation on the construction before the end of the time frame to complete that. And I think there's some concern that the construction estimates that were provided might be low, and could take more of those funds than we realize. And so if we were to do all the design and engineering for base Alt 1 and Alt 2, plus the current construction estimate, while it might fit right now within that ARPA dollars, if for some reason that construction estimate is 50% of the total, then we won't have enough money to complete it. So my initial thought is kind of working with what we know in the timeframe, which is the base design and engineering, plus the base construction. If there's still dollars, and I know that some of this may bleed over into Alt 1 design, maybe we can continue the construction as opposed to, with the ARPA dollars, as opposed to using the ARPA dollars for the Alt 1 and Alt 2 design and engineering. Just because, again, I think there's a bigger risk because of the potential construction costs that we don't know yet. I don't want to overcommit the ARPA dollars to the design and engineering phases and not have enough to complete the project.
This is something I've been thinking about. I mean, we get it up to the county line, we're excited about it. but if nobody uses it, I just want to make sure that we think about, like, can we do things that would make people want to ride it? Like, I don't know in our designing, if there's design elements we can.
Well, I think
do,
there's certainly
you know,
design,
something
yeah.
besides just a path in
Yeah.
that.
So it was interesting, when we were out at Highway, we were looking at one of the water crossings, and I was looking over this sort of marshy area, and I said, boy, that'd be a great place for a trailhead, to sit there and be able to look over the marshy area. So I think that's all part of what we can look at.
I just want to make sure we were thinking about that
Yeah.
as we design this.
Well, I agree completely. I think the two elements that make me more comfortable with that are the fact that in some of the proposals, that part of the design and engineering is to actually make it attractive to people to use it. Now, the flip side is the biggest issue for trail usage is if they don't go anywhere, right? So if we had a long 7 or 8 mile pathway just from Chinworth to the county line, not counting even get to Winona Lake, that's enough distance. I think we'll get a lot of usage. But there's also been the initial conversations with Marshall County that they're extending their trail from Plymouth to Bourbon, which isn't far from the county line. So now all of a sudden, we have a long connection between cities. And again, all the data shows that trails are not used because they don't go anywhere, right? We start connecting our trails, and I have a high confidence they're gonna be used because all the data shows that. So I don't know if that answers your question,
No,
but
it does. I
that's,
just want to make sure, because
Yeah.
I don't want to spend a lot of time and effort
Yeah.
to get this path on there, and it just sits there most of the time.
right, and I think, I understand that concern, but I think there's a few things already in play that alleviate my concern for this trail on that.
But I do think that our charge was to do that 0.8 mile, and the fact that we may be able to get money to go farther is a bonus.
Yeah,
And we need to focus on that 0.8 as our first priority.
Yeah, I think we'll learn a lot from doing that as well.
Yeah, and we learned a lot meeting with Steve. Talking about cost, one thing that's interesting is the asphalt is all market-based because you're using petroleum products in
Yeah.
it. So he was saying that he thought those costs were about 10% higher than what he has been paying. But now that gas went up 30 cents a gallon, I don't know if that wipes that out.
right. So I think I guess my point is I'd rather have some wiggle room on the construction cost to either make sure we hit it for the 0.8 and or possibly be able to extend a little bit further to, say, the next county road for the time being. And so that's why my thought is not to use the ARPA dollars for Alt 1 or Alt 2 design and engineering and find alternate sources for those, to pay for those.
Okay. Last year, when the state announced another round of funding for the next level trails, we thought, oh, great. And then we kind of got the message, but you're not shovel-ready on
Yeah.
anything.
Right.
So these ARPA dollars are also an opportunity for us to have a trail segment that would be designed and engineered, ready to move forward when a construction grant comes up. Another consideration, I understand where there's the water crossings on the trail that will need to get, see, I may not remember the two entities right, DNR, Indiana DNR, or IDEM permits. And Steve Moriarty told us that the timeline to get those permits from application to award is typically 6 to 8 months. And that's if they don't identify
Yeah.
anything that would cause it to even be longer than that. So as we're thinking about the construction phase of Alt 1 and Alt 2, we'll just need to keep that in mind. We don't think there will be any DNR or IDEM issues in the initial base project. So the timing to get permitting won't be that long timing.
And I appreciate that. And don't get me wrong, and when for what I said, it doesn't mean that we aren't able to find alternate sources to fund Alt 1 and Alt 2. Or we may find in 3 or 4 months of work and discussion, we are more comfortable to maybe at least move forward with Alt 1 within the ARPA funds if we feel that we have a stronger handle on construction and the length. So we don't have infinite time, but, we might have a little bit of time to understand, because again, if it's an allocation of ARPA funds, then, you know, we could identify the allocation by the end of this year and still meet that requirement, as long as we're very comfortable that we're going to be able to, you know, design, engineer, and build the base design. But that doesn't, but I think we immediately are thinking about finding alternate funding for Alt 1 and Alt 2, design and engineering. I'm just cautious putting it all into the ARPA funds now, because I'm not comfortable that there's enough there to cover everything. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a great discussion. It really ties into sort of the next key point, which was the 2024 goals. And some of what we talked about is exactly what I got down. I continue to think it seems to just be compounding, but the master plan and the Chenoweth extension both have to stay as our number one goal for 2024. They're not complete.
Yep. I think that's fair.
But I've also got down, what is our next project? I think we need to be looking and thinking about that. I have spoken before that I'd like to see us set up a Friends of the Park program. I think we're in a good spot to start thinking about that, especially with Matt's discussion about what are we gonna do to make these, rideable. That may be something, that outside grantors would be willing to participate in. And the other thing that I'm going to throw in, and is something that I know we've talked with Amanda about, was a countywide trail summit. To get all the trail holders together and talk about things. And we hadn't talked about it in this context, but I think asking the contiguous counties to participate would be very helpful.
Well,
with that.
technically, our trails are part of the Crossway Trail system that MACOG has developed across the, well, MACOG has been part of it. So when you look at the other counties in a entirety, it's called the Crossway Trails as well. So we're part of that, and as
Right.
we connect, it'll be more obvious. So I don't see a solution where we have 15 logos at every, you know, trailhead, but, you know, that's something we have to think about. So I completely agree, we need to start talking to some of the, you know, our outside area partners, collaborators in the future for that discussion.
I can tell you, I hate trail systems where the name changes every 3 miles because you're in a different
Yeah.
incorporated community who's named their trail system something else. But that's something, I mean, you talk about with the various trail systems when you get together and see if you can come to an agreement on those sorts of things. And even things like, do the communities want to agree on a priority system? We don't necessarily want 5 different communities all applying for a next level grant in the same year that may limit any of our abilities to get a single grant. And that, obviously, some of that's above our board level, but it's great for the trail system to understand what everybody else is asking for and what the status of their systems are. And I know we sort of think that we're for everybody's trails, not just the ones out in the county. But those were sort of what I put down as my goals for 2024. I'll be happy to turn the floor over. Aggie, you want to go next?
In our 5-year master plan, not the Trails master plan, but the plan we completed, I think it was back in April, we had, I think it was 8 primary goals and some sub-goals. I'd love to have us pull that out, maybe at our next meeting, and take a look at especially those things that had been identified as medium and high priorities, and see if there's some that we can identify how we can move those forward. We're already doing some of them, but yeah, I want to just make sure we don't just leave that
Can we
master
actually just
plan
make
on the
that an
shelf.
action item for the next meeting? Let's review the goals out of the master plan.
Yeah.
And, you know, identify the ones that we should be working on this year.
It makes sense to me.
Rob, you had talked about kind of identifying priorities of next projects, and we're in a little bit of an in-between, right? The master trails plan should tell us that, at least for greenways and blueways. but doesn't stop us from, identifying those other projects that we probably need an earlier focus. So it's a little bit of, I think, both working together. But certainly it gets back to your point, Aggie, right? To access some grants, we want to be shovel ready on some projects. So we might need to get ahead of that plan a little bit with a couple priorities.
Anybody else? Calls for
I
this?
think one of the things we're gonna keep in mind is, we wanna make this for our community, so our community's happy, but it's also, would be nice to make it so that it looks good for people who are considering coming to our community, like, how do we draw more people into our community? And then keep them here, possibly if they're thinking about moving here. So I think that maybe we could just, I don't know what that even looks like exactly, or if that's even in our,
Oh, it is. Those are part of our goals,
Yeah.
tourism, quality of
Yeah.
life, quality of place, retention of people and
so we could
attraction.
just start thinking of ways to
Absolutely.
really draw people into our community.
Yep.
Either visitors or people who live here permanently.
I think there's a couple projects as well that exist that need collaboration between the city or the town and the county and another entity. Like one example, and I'm not saying it's priority, is to have a loop around Winona Lake, right? There's 3 different entities that are responsible for land along the way. Just throw that out as an example. There's probably going to be many activities like towns are working on that need the county participation. So I think we need to, maybe some of that will maybe come out in the Trails Master Plan, but I think we might want to try to identify those sooner or later and see if some of those are a priority for us as well.
We should somehow let them know that we are, like you said, Mike, we're
Yeah.
ready to work with them. We need to
Yeah.
get this stuff done for our community.
I know Aggie and I were reached out to by one of the planners from Warsaw about things that we had going on, and we passed over a number of information, and they were putting together sort of what I thought was an overarching plan of what everybody was doing. So I know we sent them to North Webster and Syracuse Wawasee as
Yeah.
well, since they have plans that are very far along in terms of more new trail building.
Yep.
Anything else? Well, I think our plate's gonna be pretty full. Certainly my hope is the master plan is done by the end of the year. We're turning dirt on Cinworth by the end of the year. And we have some idea what we want to do next.
Well, hopefully we've actually initiated what we're doing next, whether that's through some grant approvals or,
Yeah,
you
right,
know, the next phase or something along those lines.
right.
Good?
Let's see, our next regular meeting is February 15th. Remind all the board members that stick around, we have paperwork we all need to sign. And good of the order, anything else to, Commissioner?
Just kind of give my 2 cents worth on a few of the things you were talking about here. Really appreciate the good discussion you guys are having. You guys are right on point of what I think at least me as a commissioner and what I think the county needs from a perspective. I think we got to keep our main thing, the main thing. We have our objective of trying to finish out the HELP program, and that's that Chenworth project and getting that first base in there. And I think it's smart to try and let's learn to walk before we crawl, or crawl before we walk and before we run. So I think if we can get that design done and get a good firm contract that we know where our pricing's going to be, then I think jumping right into the next level on designing that further out. 100% agree, we need to have a shovel-ready project that's already designed. Ideally, permits are even in hand. I mean, I think all those things will move a project a lot further up the list of being approved than, it's just a napkin sketch and, you don't have any other financing in place or anything like that. So I think there's a lot of really good things you guys talked about. I think you're on point. Just appreciate your guys' efforts and really look forward to what 2024 brings to us, so.
Thank you.
And like Mike said, I mean, I have had conversations with both commissioners in Elkhart County and commissioners in Marshall County. Both of them are excited about trying to connect into our trail system. So I know as we start that master trail and Blue Way plan, I think it'd be good to reach out to those neighboring communities, that at least there's a point of contact that we can talk with, just to make sure, we're thinking we're gonna exit our county here, is that where they're envisioning they would connect at, or they have another plan someplace else, so. Thank you.
Hi again. A couple quick
Amanda, why don't
things.
you introduce yourself?
Oh,
first?
sure. Amanda Plank. I'm the newish executive director of the Syracuse Wawasee Trails. I joined, let's say, July. And I've gotten to meet with Rob and Mike and a couple other folks, kind of just more bigger picture, if you will, as far as Syracuse Wawasee Trails go. And so, Rob, I'm glad that you had mentioned kind of more of a local, almost subcommittee of these trail users. And I just want on the record, I'd love to be a part of leading that discussion with kind of more of a peer focus, and contacting, say, Dan Theistrup with North Webster or some other local players. That way we keep that conversation going. We will be competing for the same grants. And so if we don't get our timing right, I fear that we overwhelm funders locally and on a broader kind of vision. So just throwing that out there. And then one other thing, I was chatting with Mike this morning about, there's a DNR Trails Advisory Board. I'm not sure if you all are familiar with it, but I was chatting with Jackson, the Assistant City Manager for Warsaw. He had actually recommended me for the Trails position on this board, and someone is actually currently sitting in that seat and doesn't want to give it up until 2025, which is great. But there are 2 other positions open on that board, and I think it's super applicable to what we're discussing, keeping DNR in the loop on what we're working with, especially as we're talking about permits and whatnot in the future. One of them is Parks and Rec, as far as the category goes, and then the other is Health. I don't know that I'm the appropriate person to really represent either of those categories. The due date is for the application is February 1st. So I just want to put it out to the group, especially so we can have some representation from this county. Again, Parks and Rec and Health. The idea is just to keep a voice from the county, from the local communities here on that table constantly and kind of in their minds and their mouths, if you will. And so hopefully that would not just bring some more support and attention to the projects that we're working on, but of course, possible funding opportunities and connections. So I just want to throw that out there. I don't think I will be representing either of those because it doesn't quite fit with what I'm doing, but this board may know some folks to recommend. I can connect you with the right person with DNR who's leading that if you do have someone to recommend.
Would you go ahead and send that to me, and
bet.
I'll get it out to all the board members?
You bet. It's a tight
Especially if there's-
timeline, so
Yeah, if we can look at the particulars of what they're looking for.
Yep.
See if we have members interested.
yeah, absolutely. They actually have a nice listing on their website, but then I know exactly who's leading it from the DNR side,
Okay.
so I'll connect you as well. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Will the advisory committee meetings be open to the media?
I believe so. I don't, yeah. So these are all part of the open meetings required for this sort of structure. So we'll let Katie at TSW know to send you guys the information. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
There doesn't need to be a second for that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, we are adjourned for this month. Because you're good at it. Practice makes perfect.
All right. Oh, hey, I need to pass these along, or did I already do that? Okay. Okay. It's going pretty good, yeah. Yeah, life is good. Things are going along pretty good. Today's been a nice day as far as the weather break and